If your team is remote, hybrid, or working somewhere between the laundry room and the dog park, there's a good chance that their attention is elsewhere. Distraction isn't just annoying, it is draining your budget, killing innovation, and turning your culture into a chaotic Slack thread. And that's what we're talking about today on Marc Haine Live. Welcome to this episode. This is where small business owners and entrepreneurs develop new skills to help them create the jaw-dropping, show-stopping experience that their customers and their employees deserve. I am your host, customer and employee experience strategist, Marc Haine, and today we're going to be diving headfirst into the chaos of remote work to uncover how you can stop chasing your team's attention and start inspiring their very best, no matter where the heck they're plugging in from. I do have one simple request though. If there's somebody in your circle who could benefit from the insights that we're sharing today, do them a favor, pass along a link to this episode. That way they get to take advantage of the knowledge you've just picked up too as well. Do it. And it's free. I know perfectly well that leading a remote team these days feels a little bit like herding cats with a feather duster while blindfolded on a unicycle. Between the back-to-back Zoom calls, endless notifications, and the constant battle for attention, most teams are barely hanging on, let alone thriving. And here's the thing. This is not a remote work problem. It is a focus problem. And if we don't fix it, we're going to end up losing our people. We're going to lose our competitive advantage, and we're going to lose our sanity. So that brings us to our question of the day. So, is your team working remotely or just remotely working? I'd love to get your ideas, your thoughts. Why don't you go ahead, share a link to this episode on your favorite social media platform, hashtag it, Experience Leadership, put your comments down because I'd love for you to be part of this conversation. I'd love to hear from you. As I mentioned, today's guest has helped tell stories about Die Hard, Wolverine, Transformers, even Star Trek. Steven Puri is a former Hollywood producer turned tech founder and the creator of the Sukha company, a platform designed to help remote teams focus better, feel better, and actually get stuff done. From raising millions in venture capital to producing Oscar-winning visual effects, Steven's journey is as action-packed as the franchises he once led. And today, he's bringing Hollywood-level thinking to your home office. Steven, welcome to the show. It's great to have you here.
Mark, to hear you give that bio, I'm like, oh, I want to meet him too. Hold on.
Just look in the mirror. Very great to you. Awesome. Hey, Steven, so let's start off a little bit. Why don't we start off by talking a little bit about who your clients are and kind of how do you serve them?
I'll tell you, we have a membership. Let me explain what we do is I have a community that is based around a focus app. And we built this largely on the principles of Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, who wrote the book on flow, as well as Cal Newport, Nir Eyal, Clear. There are a bunch of very smart people who have written books in this area. And it was really around this. As for most of the world, there was this evolution because of the pandemic into, we have to understand how remote work works. If I'm an individual contributor or I'm a leader. And then it also became like, hybrid work. And now we have these different colors on our palette we can paint with. So what I noticed is that in film, where I had come from, there's already established ways of doing this very successfully, both as an IC as well as a leader. And that's really why I created this current company. A lot of the people in our membership are writers, designers, engineers. They're people who do knowledge work. They're almost all college educated or postgraduate, over 30. And they need to do 3 or 4 hours of really deep work a day. And that is what moves their team forward. That's what moves their career forward. And we're just set up to help them overcome the obstacles to really push things, supercharge their life.
I love that you said and actually defined that we expect them to do 3 to 4 really focused hours of work. A lot of entrepreneurs, business owners would say, but wait a minute, I'm paying people for 8 hours a day. What do you mean you only want 3 hours? Let's talk a little bit about that.
Mark, that is what you just said is a fantastic phrase, because I think as we evolve in work, one of the things you start to understand is what you're paying for is results. If you want to pay by the hour, then you should own a Burger King.
But again, results count, right? It's still about results.
So
it's still about deliverables.
Suppose you even own a Burger King and you said, I would love to pay a percentage of every burger, see how many you can sell. And you had some superstars who are selling 60 burgers a minute or something ridiculous. Mm-hmm. Or right. You said, hey, man, I'm giving you $15 an hour. Just like push the menu.
Right.
You know what the results are going to be.
And it's interesting.
It's really about what you get done.
Yeah. So it's interesting because I think that was kind of the paradigm shift we saw during the pandemic. Because, when all of a sudden people had to work remotely, like people ran out, owners, operators, managers ran out to buy software to be able to put onto laptops so we could surveil how many hours you're putting in. And, we were hitting people up on Slack channels with, hey, Donna, I don't know why you're only working 6 hours this week or today or right. And it's like, that's a little bit of a change in philosophy when you turn around and say, well, let's start looking at results rather than hours.
Yes. Let me give you an example.
Sure.
So as I said, my career in film, whereas, as an executive vice president at DreamWorks at Kurtzman Orsi, as a vice president at 23 Fox, a lot of those lessons when I moved into tech mapped really well onto the current set of challenges, both as someone who is working on something as well as someone who's leading a team of people working. And I'll give you an example. So writing, the core of any creative project, except, well, not any creative, the core of film and television, maybe not sculpting or, painting, but the core of those is the script, right? So fundamentally, you have to have a good foundation. So you need a quality script. Now, the Writers Guild regulates how that's done. You have X number of weeks in this contract to deliver a first draft. You get a set of notes in this many weeks. You have this much time to execute the revisions based upon those notes from the studio or the producer, right? So it's a very regulated thing saying, here are the time boxes in which you work. Now, it is interesting because you are not paying that writer. You're not paying David Ayer $1.5 million or Kurtzman Orsi $2 million because they spent 60 hours on it. What you're paying for is you got Avengers Infinity Game and it's ready to shoot. Or you got the F1 movie at such a quality level, Brad Pitt wants to be in this, right? So you don't care. What you want is something great. And if you are hiring talented people, that's great. Now, something you brought up before when you were joking was, hey, Donna, are you working? Like, I haven't seen you online, this sort of thing. There is no solution to bad hiring. Right. Bad hiring leads to you need to fire and learn how to hire better. If someone is not aligned with what your company does, like I can't solve that. You can't solve that. No one can solve that. Just learn how to screen people better. Mm-hmm. So really, I think what we're going to talk about is when you have people that are open to be inspired, open to contribute and do great things, how can you help them feel great about that and feel healthy as well as have your business grow because of it?
Yeah, I love that. And again, I think we have to change from this idea. I worked in municipal government for a short time, mm-hmm. and it was interesting when I walked in at like 9:45 after having a breakfast meeting with a stakeholder at 7 a.m. And as I'm walking past the front desk, somebody's like, well, isn't that nice? We have to be here by 8:30.
Right.
And it's like, oh, well, I've been working since. Why is it that the perception is if you're not at your desk, you're not working? And then, of course, you have all those, the solitaire games, from ages ago of people sitting at their desk, supposedly working, playing solitaire.
They're checking in. It's warm bodies, right? Well, the funny thing is, to go back to the film thing is, film for 100 years has operated with remote, hybrid, in-person, but it's never called it that. These terms really became popular, as you said, with Zoom and the pandemic and how do we make this work, right?
Yeah.
Because if you think about every film starts remote. It is writers writing alone in coffee shops, writing in their homes, their writing partners, living rooms, sort of thing, right? At some point, your script is done and you start to have a couple coffees with producers or studio executives trying to get them interested. Maybe one of them gets some traction. So you move from remote into hybrid. You get a little money, you set up a production office. 1 or 2 days a week, you go in to meet with the location scout. Hey, Mark, I read your script. Tell me more about the castle you want to have, because I know some place in Eastern Europe. So you start to do 1 or 2 days a week, and then you go off 3 days a week and you do script revisions because, Chris Hemsworth really wants to do this thing, but it has to be like different, right? Then there's a day where it's $125,000 a day. You are on set with a lot of people. It is RTO. It is, in office, in person, whatever you want to call it. But you do that for months and it is intense. And then you go back to hybrid. As you know about sound, it's sound editors and picture editors and Foley artists working, you drift in and out and you go back to remote. And that whole lifespan of a project has been natural in film for 100 years. There are established ways as a leader that you lead through each era, and there are established ways you contribute if you're an IC. So that was really what I thought was interesting. That's why I created the platform I created, just to say, hey, here's some like obvious lessons that map into this world, because it's not really that new. It's just in some industries it's new.
Yeah. And so it was interesting because as I was going through and preparing for the show, I thought about, this whole idea of remote work and how people blame remote work for not getting certain things done. And then this whole statement that this is not about remote working. This is about creating cultures of trust. It's creating cultures where people have time to focus in their zone of genius. I mean, we've talked about disengagement on this show, including all the different fads around disengagement, quiet quitting, bare minimum Mondays, coffee badging.
Burnout.
But we've never really talked about this idea of being distracted at work, and whether that's in person or remote, we all have our different things. Like I'm working in the office and, I'm heads down, just grinding it out. And somebody comes up and goes, "Hey, Mark, do you have a couple minutes?" And it's
what do you say?
Right? And so no different than the remote worker who all of a sudden has to let their dog out, or their kids are home for lunch, right? Yeah. So why is it that we have so many leaders misdiagnosing engagement problems as performance problems?
Let me respond to that in a slightly different way, which is when you talk engagement and performance, I think I agree with you that when someone is engaged in what the company or the team does, if I fundamentally believe that we are making great running shoes and that is a good thing for the world, I may spend extra time designing the logo on the running shoe or designing the squishiness of the sole, or whatever that thing may be, right? Because I'm engaged in what the company does.
Right.
And the performance hopefully is engagement times my skill set, right? Because if I suck, I can be engaged. I'm not really moving the shoe forward, right? So hopefully you have that match there where the engagement is the fundamental energy that drives the car forward, but the engine of the car is what you're hiring. You're hiring someone to say, yes, I love running shoes. I believe in this. I want to make the next generation of this social app, of this running shoe, of this restaurant concept, or whatever that thing is. So, and here's, to add on to that a little bit, here's something that I have found, and this is not original, but it's been demonstrated to me so clearly, is that when you have someone with a particular passion, there's a reason for why they want to do this. It is about you as a leader learning how to channel that, right? And when you have someone who doesn't have that passion, it's for you as a leader to determine, is it that I'm not inspired? Is it not inspiring? Do I need to find a way to ignite that passion? Or should they work in another division? Or should they work somewhere else? Let me help them get to that place, because we do have something great to do. And it's making sure you have the people who need to do the thing great that you need done great.
Yeah. There's so much to what you just said, Steven, because part of it is to what you said before about hiring right. So hiring the people with the capacity and the competency to be able to do the work that they want to do. But then there's this other side of that coin where it's like, are we hiring people to really shine within their superpower? Yeah. Right? Like, because we hire somebody, like I was meeting with somebody with an organization. We were talking about how when people come into their business, usually the first step is they're in reception. But then, after a while, they're saying, well, and then they want to do other things. And we hired them as a receptionist, but now but they come in and they want to do other things in the organization. And if we don't give it to them, then they leave. And it's like, but here's the thing. You hired people within a job description. What you want to do is constrain them by that job description. You don't want them to step into their superpower. And of course, they're not going to stick around.
Yeah.
So, so when we're talking about whether it's in-person, hybrid, or remote work, this is all the same concepts.
Yes. And the thing I think we keep going back to is that sense of like, how are you a great leader? How do you say, oh, you know what? I understand these things because we have more options now than we did. Like my father and mother both went to IBM for a certain number of hours each day, every weekday. Right. And my mom was a systems programmer. My dad was a chip designer, a logic chip designer, like CPUs. And it was a very traditional sort of relationship, right? I have raised $21 million of venture across 3 companies. I've had 2 failures and 1 successful exit. And I'll tell you the lessons in both those, in the failures and the exit, very much around, hey, how am I growing as a leader with this? Oh, we're remote, we're hybrid, we're in person. And learning to say, like, for example, in film, because I had more film than television, I have never actually had a Zoom call or any sort of video conference call that has led to the collaborative ideas that I've had in person. There's something about a certain kind of collaboration that when you're in the room, it's just, I don't know if the smell or the vibe or the energy, where it's just different. You can be on a Zoom call and have the exact same thing going, I feel like in the 3rd act, the hero, well, he's got the sword, but he needs to do something more unique with it. You know what I mean? That sort of thing, right? Or, God, we're positioned against this other product that's killing us, and there's something in the marketing that we should bring out and pull forward that would really differentiate us, right? And you're doing it on a Zoom call. And there are many theories why, but I'm going to tell you flat out, I've never seen that level of creativity as when you're in the room. Like, for example, I do yoga. I have a daily yoga practice. I met my wife in yoga. For 10 years, we've been doing yoga together every day, right? We're not traveling or sick. And it is true. I could do yoga in my living room with an iPad alone. But I drive a yoga class every day because there's something about being in that room with a group of people who are all trying to push themselves and do something great that lifts me up. It's like you can buy a pair of Nikes. They'll say you a left and right shoe, go run. But 100 million people belong to the Nike Run Club. And there's something about that. As a group, as a community, we go farther, we go faster, we're accountable, we hold each other up. And when you as a leader start to understand, oh, here are the group dynamics, this work, go home, spend 2 days. I'm not going to call you, come back with this, right? I don't care if you do it in 1 hour or 70 hours in 2 days. That's a joke. But come back with greatness, as opposed to, hey, on Friday, let's all hang out together and really like come up with that creativity that comes from being in the room. So I think that's one of the really great things now about being a leader is you have that whole spectrum of like, what tool is appropriate and how do I lead into that tool?
I think that's really, really interesting because this is the first time I think I've had a conversation with somebody who said, let's look at remote and in-person and hybrid with more strategy.
Right.
Because right now we have businesses that says, no, we're tired of people working from home. We want everybody in the office. And then when you ask why? Well, because it's just better. And it's like, but why?
Yes.
Right.
And it's not a binary thing. It's something to be celebrated going like, there is absolutely a reason to do in-person work.
Yeah.
And there is absolutely a reason to do, your joke earlier about you're 15 minutes into something and someone comes back, knock, knock, knock. Hey, Mark, can I ask you a question? Yeah. What do you got? What do you got? And like Cal Newport has a fantastic blog post about this where he talks about, the 22 minutes it takes you to get back toward essentially a flow state. And, Mihai Csikszentmihalyi's book on flow, absolutely fantastic. What is that weird state you get into where you look up and you're like, wow, I'm done. I didn't check my email. I didn't.
Or wow, did I just miss lunch?
Yeah, exactly. I missed lunch. And you understand like that great Michael Jordan quote about when I'm in the zone, it's just me and the ball. Yeah. It's like there are no defenders, there's no scoreboard, there's no stands. It's just I get to that place where it's me and the ball. It's that Picasso thing about I know I stayed up all night. I forgot to pee. I didn't eat. But here's Guernica. What do you think? Nice, huh? It's that weird thing of like when you get in that state, and he did such a beautiful job researching and explaining it. um, that you realize, oh, there's absolutely an argument to be made for deep work. So it's not the knock, knock, knock. Hey, Mark, can I have a minute? Yeah, let me put this down. Okay, what do you need? And you context switch. And there's all that,
Yes.
research around, do we multitask? No, we don't.
No.
We monotask. And when you monotask and you stick in the middle of it, context switching. So it's like, let me put aside the brain I was using on this bit of code or this copy I was writing or, this design I was doing, and then switch into that other thing that you need me to do now. Come back. You get less done because you burn brain energy just context switching. It's just like a computer saying, let me store all that away. Let me load in the new parameters for this thing, execute that for a while, and then we're going to store that to RAM. And it's like that sort of thing.
And anybody who grew up with a computer that was a 386 way back when you had to go, oh, I got to switch programs. Hold on a second. Take this disk out, put this disk in, wait for it to load.
Wow, that was a strong move, my friend.
So would it be fair to say then, that we were treating remote work as if people were supposed to be working in person, but really there's different philosophies. So where do you think remote work culture has really gone off the rails now?
I think that there are definitely, everyone has a great example of like, oh, so-and-so hired, do you know, at their company, and this person had 3 jobs, and they were sort of like all spoofing that, yes, there are bad actors in any system.
Sure.
You can use any example to sort of justify almost any point because there's always either an outlier or a middle of the road example. So with the remote work thing, I would say this, like, if you are looking to succeed, if you're looking to get the most out of yourself, execute on your dharma, do something great, do the thing you're capable of, right? Mm-hmm. Or you're looking to inspire someone, like, I have this guy on my team, Mark. When I let him go for like a day or two, he comes back with like the next 3 months of copy. He's like, this is the direction our company, we should be marketing ourselves, right? I stick him in this cubicle with that annoying girl across the office that asks him questions all day long. It's been 2 weeks. He's got nothing, right? So there are other like mental hacks that I found to be very interesting. And again, you can study this, is there is also in which your brain is trained to execute certain kinds of things well in certain spaces. And this again is something that I saw several times in film where I was like, oh, there's a pattern here. For example, the director and producer, Roland Dean, with whom I did Independence Day, Godzilla, and stuff like that, right? So they had a creative space. There was this villa in Puerto Vallarta, Mexico, right? It is their place where they just talked about, oh, the way the light comes in the morning in the pool is inspiring. This is where we write. This is where they'd written their great scripts, right? Their scripts that had grown their career. So when they had to go write Independence Day, of course, Roland turns to his assistant, hey, rent the house next week. We'll probably need to be down there for 3 or 4 weeks, blah, 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 right? She comes back and she's like, it's already rented. It's like an Airbnb or something. The hue and cry around the office of like, oh my God, our process is... Roland called John Deemer, his attorney. It was like, buy the house. He bought the house that weekend. I don't know what happened to the people that are renting it. I'm sure they were paid off. And Monday, they were down there writing, right? But it was that thing of like, we have so trained ourselves to be in this beautiful location with this space and this... And the other end of the spectrum is like Alex and Bob. Bob, who sadly just passed away a couple weeks ago, they had written Mission Impossible 3 and Transformers and Zorro movie, and they'd been on Alias and all this stuff, right? They came up very much just like scrappy guys, like the dorm room, we're writing our next great thing. Their writing process, when they came down to, we have to go deliver this thing, is their assistant would go rent a room, I'm not making this up, at the Universal Hilton. Not a luxury hotel, I'm just going to say. But for them, it evoked that feeling of like, we're those scrappy young guys writing, from our dorm room sort of thing. And that was their magic, where once they entered that, they just cranked out stuff that you and I have, $3-4 billion worth of box office from being in that mentality. So I think that sort of thing is understanding someone going like, Mark, this feels like the kind of thing you need to go like home and sit in your office and like, go do that. I'll see you on Wednesday. Let's see what you come up with, as opposed to, we should all go to the conference room and brainstorm on this. Very different. And as a leader, you start to learn which works for which.
And so as a leader, when you have these different things, we've done shows where we talked about night owls versus early risers, and how some people work really good in opposites, and expecting everybody to do the 9 to 5 may be
Yeah.
unreasonable. So now we're adding another dimension to that conversation, because now you're saying maybe location matters. And so then
Location
how
matters,
does,
but I also want to hang a lantern on what you said.
sure.
Chronotype is really important. When you start to understand that about someone who's working for you, you
Mhm.
are really sophisticated to go, Mark sucks after lunch, but Jenny, home run after lunch. How do I play to that? What you said
Yes.
is so true.
And so as leaders then, how do we uncover some of that? Because maybe you have team members where you haven't figured that out yet. So how do you test, how do you set yourself up to try and fail to the point where you can really find that when we put this group of people kind of in this environment, they really fly, but yet if we do it into the regular kind of, they just suck.
Yeah. Well, Mark, I mean, you're smart enough. You embedded the answer in the question.
Oh, did I? Oops.
Yeah, right. Whoops. Oh, did that happen? Yes. I'm not going to belabor the point. What you said is exactly right, which is when you become sensitive to these things, then you start to track them. And again, when you measure something, you can improve it. So when you start to go, wow, 3 times I've asked Mark to do this kind of thing in the office, in the afternoon group setting, and his ideas suck. Twice he's gone home and the day later given us like a revolutionary idea. Let me see. Data don't lie.
Yeah. Cause and effect, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. This is brilliant. Are there any early warning signs that a workplace culture is dysfunctional or headed towards this level of disengagement that we're talking about? Like, are there any things that you could pinpoint if somebody's tuning in going, I just expect people just to do their work, and I don't know if they're disengaged?
Yeah, well, I mean, what you're touching upon there is something that I'm not an expert in. I have thoughts on it, and I'll share that. Really, where
Sure.
I focus is around focus and healthy productivity and how to manage the remote, hybrid, in office work. But what you're
Right.
talking about is very true. As someone who has led teams, I have learned through mistakes that you can't have so many direct reports and so many people beneath you that you're basically just reading emails from them, right? You
Right.
have to have some sort of personal connection to have that judge of like, you know what? Jennifer feels like something's up because I've seen her 3 times this week. I've seen her 3 times a week for 16 weeks. And I've measured her work, yes, but I also have that spidey sense. So I think that is a very true thing, but I can't speak to that with reliable metrics. That is
Right.
more personal experience. That's anecdotal.
And from what you've experienced in your own data, as it were.
Correct. Yeah.
So this idea, I know that there are boardrooms everywhere just debating this thing about hybrid versus remote
Yes.
versus in person.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the common term is like distributed or flexible teams.
Oh, there's so
What do
many
you?
words now. Work
I know,
anywhere,
right?
distributed teams,
Yeah.
remote teams. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so what are the most common problems that you're tripping across when it comes down to these conversations? Because a lot of it is going to be anecdotal conversations.
Yeah.
It's like, no, I think people do better in the office.
Yes. Okay. Well, as we said, let us assume for the purposes of this answer that your hiring process is good. That you haven't
Yes,
hired people who don't want to do what you do, that don't care, that are trying to cheat you out of
nothing
money,
will
right?
work. Yeah,
Right. So let's assume you have people who have the potential to be inspired and move your company forward, and you'll be a winner in your category. But the challenge is obviously inspiring them, delegating properly, and doing those managerial things. So I'll tell you one thing very specifically, and this had come up. We have thousands of people in our membership, and I talk to as many as I can because I want to learn. I always approach it. I try to do that beginner's mind thing of like, tell me what's hard. Why is it hard? How often? How do you try and solve that? Right. One of the most common things that comes up, and this is from C-suite to, hey, I am the new worker bee here, right? Is the cold start problem. There's very often, and it's not popular for people to say this out loud unless you really dig down, is that thing of like, okay, first thing in the morning, I know I need to get going. I've made myself a mental, agreement. I'm gonna start at 8:30, or I'm at work at 9. I need to, and that thing. And there's always like in the remote situation, well, I could go throw in that load of laundry, or I didn't do the dishes last night. Let me just in 5 minutes do this. Or let me just return those emails really quickly, and then I'll do the thing on my task list, right? And if you're in the office, then it's the thing of like, I'll just run and get a cup of coffee. I bumped into Mark at the cooler, do the thing, come back, that sort of thing, right? That cold start problem of getting going. There is a lot of writing, as you probably know, around two schools of thought. One is the eat the frog, which is, hey man, start with the hardest thing on your list, your most important task. You'll feel so good when it's done, blah, blah, blah. And the other school of thought is build momentum, right? Knock one or two things off. You're like, oh my God, what's 10 a.m. and I've already done two things as opposed to starting with a 3-hour task, right? So here's what I've found. It is not a one-size-fits-all solution. This, again, is a thing is, even as a leader or a leader of yourself, that you start to acknowledge, how does that work? For example, I preached the most important task, the MIT thing, the eat the frog, for a while until I really experimented on myself. And I said, you know what? It does work for some people that I counsel. But for me, I am way better at saying, let me pick off two things. And when I get to that third thing, I'm like, I got this. Like, I'm on a roll, right? And it gets me through that. So number one, it is about understanding where on that spectrum you or the person that you are leading, falls. And another part of it is when you dig down into the procrastination, like why, Mark, why is it in the morning you have a hard time going? Why do you want to do the dishes or go to the coffee break room and grab that? Why is that? Well, okay, well, why is that? Well, you dig down and it's usually one of two things. It is overwhelm or it is, I don't know. So for example, sometimes let's pretend, Mark in this case, we have a lot of guys named Mark in this call. Let's say Mark is a writer, right? And he has his first task, which is like, write my next book, right? You're not going to accomplish that today. That's overwhelming. You look at it, you go, oh my God, I need a cup of coffee. Let me go do something to procrastinate because it's overwhelming. You look at that. Matter of fact, in the platform that we built, we have a smart assistant that when it sees stuff like that, it counsels you before you begin, like, hey, Mark, you know that write your next book thing? What if we were to make a task that's maybe 30 minutes long? Like, what about outline your first chapter? Can we do that in 30 minutes? You're talking to your smart assistant. You're like, yeah, I think I could do. When I was driving last night, I had an idea for the first chapter. Okay, why don't we make that your task, which suddenly allows you to ramp into the day better than like this huge frog you have to eat? And the other one is you look at your task list and you go, oh man, I have like 17 things to do, which we all do have 1,700 things to do, right? And sometimes the volume of that stops you. The same way, like when you have too many choices, there's that paradox of choice. Like when you have two things to choose among, and when you have 5 things to choose among, you're like, I don't know, with the guacamole, too many ranch dressing. I don't know which one, right? So that sense, and again, this is something we built into the platform because there's great research. Like if you choose 3 things and you have them visible in your field of view, I'm going to do 3 things. There's a good chance you'll finish all 3. If you put 7 things in your field of view, there's a good chance you only complete 2 of the 3 things that you would have done the other way because there's that sense of like, I'm not making any progress. This is too hard. So those 2 things, like the task is overwhelmingly large, or the task list is innumerable, right?
Right.
And again, with both of those, like this is a lot of the research I've done is why we built the platform, is to have a smart assistant that says to you, hey, let me help you break that down into smaller pieces. Or, hey, let's choose the top 3. Let's hide the rest. Let's get these done. And you go take a break, right? Simple things like that you start to learn. And that's applicable remote, giving people a tool to do that, as well as in the office where you're like, hey, this is what I do. If it helps you, I would love to share, the lessons I have learned. And the people who are ready for it, pick it up.
Mm-hmm. I love that. And, so what I'd like to do is I want to take a quick break. When we come back, I want to talk a little bit more about your platform and how it helps people and how this will help lead leaders into solutions when they're looking at things like disengagement, detachment, and not being very focused. And we'll get to that right after this.
When the spotlight shines on your business, are customers applauding or yawning? In other words, how is your business performing? Make your business a star with the new book, Lights, Camera, Action: Business Operational Excellence Through the Lens of Live Theater by Marc Haine. Marc uses his business and acting experience to help you see your business like a live show, so you can create a performance your customers will never forget. Buy Lights, Camera, Action today at your favorite online retailer or directly at marchaine.com.
Welcome back. I am here with expert speaker on remote and hybrid work, Steven Puri. We're having a great conversation. I hope you're getting tons and tons of value from this. Steven, let's delve into a little bit about this platform that you've created, because I have a sneaking suspicion as we get into solution-based, a lot of it will be tied into what you've created. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, I'll tell you this. I've done, as you were joking when we spoke before, a lot of things. It's been fun producing visual effects for movies that all my friends saw. It's been fun producing or being the studio executive on films that a lot of people have seen. Super fun stuff, right? I will tell you, when I had the moment of, okay, we're pregnant, I'm going to have a child. What am I leaving behind? Like, what is it that I am giving back? And this really struck with me a few years ago, which is the concept that there are things that I have learned that could be incorporated into a platform that was very accessible by a large number of people to allow them to do the thing that they're capable of, right? And this is why I do what I do. This is why I love, building a tech company and a community. And it really is about this problem. When you talk to a lot of people who are working remotely or hybrid, and even in office, there are very similar problems they express to you. Like we talked about the cold start problem. Oh, I procrastinate in the morning. The afternoon slump. Oh man, at 3 o'clock, I'm worthless. The 6 o'clock. Oh, where'd the day go? Matter of fact, I will tell you this. I named my company the Happiness Company. Sukha is the Sanskrit word for happiness, for like self-fulfilled happiness. I'm doing the thing that I'm great at and it feels really good, right? Why I named it that is when I was looking for a name, we had an early version of this platform and I was looking for some better name than, Focus App 14 or Productivity Mate or some god-awful thing. And when I talked to my wife and I said, hey, I'm going to talk, we're going on our honeymoon. And I said, if you don't mind, the first day, I just want to talk to a couple of our power members and hear from them like why they like what we're doing. Because I think over the course of the honeymoon, maybe my unconscious mind will, bubble something up that's good from that. So I spoke to a few of them the first day. Laura said, I'm going to the pool. You talked to a couple of people, right? So I spoke to a couple of people. I said, listen, I just want 10 minutes of your day. And had a couple of those. The third one was a guy. And I'm going to tell you, what he said stopped me in my tracks. I asked about 8 minutes of dumb questions, right? Hey, what feature do you love? Do you love the focus music? Do you love the smart assistant that helps you get stuff done? Do you love the task list? Right? We go to this. And at the end, I'm wrapping up. It's like 8 minutes in. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. I'll be thinking about this. And he said to me, Steven, you did not ask the right question. I was like, what's the right question? He said, you should ask me why I pay you. Okay, probably a little more bold than I would be. But since you brought it up, why do you pay me? He said, I pay you because at 3 o'clock, I can be playing with my kids. Or at 6 o'clock, I can say, where the hell did the day go? He said, the difference is, did I open the Sukha in the morning, right? And we hadn't even named the platform at that point. So I was talking to Laura over dinner. I was like, oh my God, I spoke to this guy. He encapsulated what we do so much better than I ever have, right? And she loved it. And then that night we're brushing our teeth, going to bed. And she said, because we have a daily yoga practice, you hear a lot of Sanskrit. She said, that thing that he said about, I feel like I'm doing the thing I'm meant to do. I'm really good at it and it feels great. She said, that's Sukha. There's a word for that we hear all the time, like prana and dharma and karma. She's like, that's a word. That's a thing. And she's like, why don't you name your company that? So I named it the Sukha Company because I think the tools that we give people are really just the path. The goal of my company is to get people to that feeling of self-fulfilled happiness. And what does that result in? What grows from that? Team engagement. Like when someone feels proud in what they do, it changes their attitude in staff meetings. It changes, what they're putting out on their LinkedIn about, hey man, my company's doing this great thing. It expresses in a lot of ways when you give someone the opportunity to go, oh, this feels great. I was meant to do this. And if you can get there, if that is like the platonic ideal of leadership, is you hire well and you let people do the thing they're great at, I mean, you're going to crush the competition. There are very few people who are that good that can do that. And so that is really what we aspire to do. And what we build is a very simple website. It's super cheap. I do this because I think it's fun and it changes the world in a good way. My kids will be proud, which is you come to our site in the morning when you start work, hit play, it blocks your distractions. There's a smart assistant, like I said, helps you break down your work into chunks where you can get going and be effective. Plays beautiful music. It manages your tasks. It measures stuff for you. So you can say, oh, how am I doing? And am I getting better day over day, week over week? There's, a leaderboard with other people. So it's sort of the competition, the gamified thing. And it's like almost like a Slack replacement that gives you a community of people who are all together. But here, they're here to do something productive. And they're sharing, here's what I did. And it celebrates that community the same way like Strava celebrates running. So that's what I do, and I love it. And if there's anyone who wants to learn more about the kind of things I do, even if it's not tied to my platform, please, you can put my email address in the show notes. I'm happy, even if someone's like, hey, that Cal Newport blog you mentioned, could you send me a link to that? I'm happy to do that.
Yeah. So can you just let people know what your contact info is? Let them know.
Absolutely, yes. So my name is Steven, Steven. So it is Steven at the Sukha, which is TheSukha.co. The Sukha Company, TheSukha.co.
Terrific. And of course, it is in the show notes, so people can just click there. I just like you to say it because I know how passionate you are about it. Yeah, so Steven, from what I've read, you've distilled a set of actionable principles that will really help. And these are probably mirrored in your platform as well. Can you walk us through Can you walk us through a few of these actionable principles to help get the people tuning in, get them in sync with what you're talking about?
So much so. And let me share this. There's that great Newton quote about, if I've seen further, it's because I stood on the shoulders of giants, right?
Yes.
So what I'm going to share, this is not that I am smart. I'm not that smart, but I did read the books and do the work, right? Yeah. So when you read Mihai's book, you read Cal's book, you read Clear, and go down the list, you find that in those probably top 12 books on focus and productivity, how to have great teams, how to participate in great teams, they boil down to the same set of concepts. And let's admit, they all have different lexicons. They need to sell you their books. They have their way of wording it, and they have their colorful examples based on this McKinsey study and this great company you've never heard of. Right? They all have that. But it really comes down to a simple set of things. I'll give you another example, which is, we talked earlier about multitasking, right? If we can encourage you to monotask, you are going to have more of those moments where you're like, wow, it's 11. And I'm like, God, I've done everything I would normally do before lunch. This is great, right? So monotasking, which of course in our platform, we encourage you to do that. When you start jumping around, your smart assistant chimes in and is like, hey, you seem like you keep going between these two things. Why don't we just finish one and get them done? And in the gamification, you get more points by finishing the thing you started, right? Simple principle. Once you start to see day over day, week over week, those results, and they compound, you get it. And it's a nice feeling again at 3:00 to whether you have a 2 and a 4-year-old like that guy did, and you get to play with them, or you're working on your side hustle or whatever you need to do, but you've done a tremendous amount of quality work. We talked about, workspaces. That's another really good one. And I'll tell you, here's a funny one that people sometimes don't realize they do, which is time boxing, which sounds like, oh, it's really disciplinarian technique of, thou shalt spend 42 minutes on this or you'll be punished. Is that right? But let me tell you this, as someone who's a procrastinator, which I am, Mark, I have to fight that every day, including now. Okay, don't say it out loud, then they'll hear, right? So as someone who's a procrastinator, you can say, oh, I don't want a time box, or I don't know this. You're going to look at all the research that says, you know what, if you say I'm going to do this in 30 minutes, magically you kind of do it in 30 minutes. And when you don't, it sprawls, right? But here's the thing is, suppose you don't time box. Like, there are many writers I worked with. Yes, you have an 8 or 10 week writing period on this. and they find that they do all the work in the last like 5 days or something, right? The other 7 weeks were like, I was thinking about it.
It was a habit we learned in school.
It is so much. But here's the thing is if you think about it, you are simply passively time boxing yourself. You're saying, I've decided to time box this into 5 days, right? Because the deadline is there and you decided to procrastinate until your time box was so small, you were nervous you wouldn't deliver. What if you were to take that time box and just do it earlier? You would do it with less anxiety. You have more opportunity to correct things. You would have more opportunity to actually solicit input. Like, hey, you know, I'm almost done. Can I bounce this off you? As opposed to like, I was up all night. This is the best I could do. You know what I mean? So it's funny because some people usually the ones who shy away from time boxing, if you point out to them that procrastinating is forcing a time box, it suddenly leads to that, I never realized I do that to myself. So just some principles that, you know, hopefully we can get to a place where the part of work where we sing our song is amazing. And the part of work that's administrative or drudge work, whatever, we have a great way of getting through it. You know, it doesn't kill you. So that's why I'm here. I
love that. Of course, leaders have different people in their businesses and their organizations. You know, I have a philosophy that in today's day and age, we need to remove the manager's cap and put on a coaching cap, where we have to become more coaches with our teams. When you think about leaders helping their teams refocus, how can they coach this? How can they understand what each person needs and be able to help them refocus?
Well, you touched on this earlier, and I don't want to belabor the point because I want us to cover as much as we can, but a lot of it is being observant. You know, it is as you learn a tool or a technique or something that's helpful. Like suppose you adopt having focus time. You say, you know what, I'm going to try this thing where the next 2 weeks, I'm going to block 9 to 11 and no one can schedule meetings with me. And you do this and you have that weird thing. If you look up to 11, you're like, wow, I didn't go to the bathroom. But most of my deep work is done for the day. Like I did 2 solid hours of amazing work, right? That sort of thing. And then you decide, well, let me share this with my team, right? I've come down from the mountain with fire. Let me give it to the humans, right? So, and don't worry, your liver is safe. Your liver is good. So you do that. And then you measure that. You say, hey, I want to offer you guys a tool. Like I've read about this. Here's maybe something you can read. There are a million great blog posts on this, right? Do you guys want to try this? And suppose you lead a team of copywriters or designers or engineers or something like that. And you know, there's some buy-in. There's like, hey, Mark, you know, we love you. We trust you. We'll try this, right? Okay, great. So for the next week, 9 to 11, I'm not going to slack you and schedule meetings over that tonight. And don't do it to each other. And let's just see how it goes. And you are absolutely going to get some people by Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. They're like, oh, you know, I needed to do this meeting with some vendor came in. Okay, failed with them. But you're going to get 3 or 4 of them to go, I think I probably did the best work I've done since I came here. And then you understand how you can lead each one, how you can coach, as you were saying, each one to say, okay, let me help develop that further with you. What else can I do to just throw more fuel onto that fire? And the people for whom it doesn't work, you need to evaluate and be observant, saying, is that because you were resistant to it, you didn't try it? Or is that because, hey, you're a salesperson and honestly, you need to be on Zoom all day long. You're not going to do any flow work here, you know?
And it's understanding what that job description looks like as well, right? Yeah. I love that. You know,
and you can measure it, you can improve it.
And I love that you touched on the procrastination side of things, because there's, you know, these philosophies as well. Do anything for 4 minutes, right? Do something, just give yourself 4 minutes to do something. Why does that work so well?
I think it's that thing we were talking about early on, which is you can say eat the frog or you can say build momentum. Yeah. And things become less scary if you do 4 minutes of work on something, suddenly you're into it. And your idea about what it is, I think it's a pictures that said men are not afraid of, and you got men, people, right? But I think he wrote it as men in Greek. People are not afraid of things, but they're afraid of their ideas about things. And sometimes the idea looking at your task list is not really your task list. It's your idea about the task list. And like you said, the 4 minutes in, once you're 4 minutes in, you're like, I got this. This is doable. So,
and you know, pair those 2 ideas now What does it look like to separate and keep 4 minutes to say, I'm going to tackle this just for 4 minutes. If I get nowhere, when I wrote my book, I used to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning. Some mornings were super, super productive. I was down and, I ended up skipping my workout. And before I knew it, it was 9:30 and I've been writing, since I got up in the morning. But other times it was like, oh, I need to research this. I need to dig a little bit deeper in this. And then I go into, and then I look at how many words I wrote. And I was like, I've only written 50 words in an hour and a half. It's like, oh my goodness, this wasn't a good day. But I would still celebrate it because I learned a bunch of stuff because I needed to uncover some research or I needed to find out what, right? But then this idea about giving oneself grace.
Yes.
You mentioned, because of the way that you named your app, this idea of happiness. At some point, where does grace fall into this when we know we kind of sort of underperformed?
I would love to throw a glass house for my stone. But I'm just going to say there are absolutely, like you said, there are days where you're like, for whatever reason, like lightning did not strike today. I didn't come up with the great idea to move our company forward. I did not, solve the weird accounting bug that's in our spreadsheet. I did not, it happens. But hopefully we're measured over the season, not on, one particular minute of one game.
Yeah.
And you actually touched on something we said, sometimes when you're writing a book, you said you do that in the morning, right?
Yes.
And it sounded like what you described as a flow state where you look up, you're like, wow, I banged out a whole chapter, right?
Yep.
Yeah. That's a beautiful experience, wasn't it?
It was. And it goes by like this. And you wonder, why can't I replicate this every single day?
Yeah. It's hard to replicate every day. But I'll tell you a funny story, which is Ron Bass is a huge screenwriter. He would not talk to his family in the mornings when he had a screenplay to write or any sort of manuscript. Because he said to his family, listen, if I greet you in the morning, like, hey, little Timmy, how you doing? Who cereal? What do you want? He said, as soon as I've spoken to you or you've spoken to me, I can't hear my characters' voices anymore. And so his family understood that part of his understanding of his like chronotype of his work ritual was he was an early morning, like 4 or 5 in the morning until like 8, 9, 10 in the morning. Dad was in his office. And then suddenly he was massively available because he's like, I've created, the movie that Julia Roberts is going to star in, right? But if he didn't respect his chronotype, if he didn't respect how he worked, would he have hooked so many stars would he have written the characters that would have hooked these stars?
Right.
Don't know.
I love that. When we come back, I'd like to talk about some cautionaries and pitfalls, things we should be aware of as we try to implicate, because I'm always fearful of Band-Aid managers. The ones who come up with a new idea and they go to their teams and say, okay, for the next 30 days, I got a new policy. And so I want to talk about cautionaries and pitfalls, and we'll get to that right after this.
When you're delivering an important speech to a huge audience, it's easy to lose your place or go way over time. Give yourself an advantage with the Pro Speaker Presentation Speech Timer app. No more checking your watch or calling for time. The Pro Speaker Presentation Speech Timer app keeps you on track with easy-to-see timers, even changing color for visual prompts during your speech. And you can set audio cues to practice, or set it to vibrate so you don't even have to look. Be the pro you know you are. Download the app at speakerpresentationtimer.com.
Welcome back. We are having a great discussion. I hope you're getting tons of value from today's conversation. As evident from our discussion today, you can tell that Steven and I are deeply passionate about supporting business leaders like you are. And if you are in the midst of planning things like a leadership retreat or an industry conference, and you're looking for amazing content, or you're just needing some expert guidance, we're just a message away. Feel free to reach out to us. Our contact information is in the show notes. We're here to serve you. So, Steven, we talked about Sukha. We talked about this tool to be able to help people with their flow state, getting into more consistent flow state. You mentioned that it has a bunch of tools. Can you describe some of those tools?
I'd be happy to. The way we design this is really based upon flow states and the writings about what conditions precedent that help you get into a flow state, as well as let you sustain it for a reasonable period of time. And one of the things I'll mention is the smart assistant that I talked to you about. It will interrupt you after 2 hours to say, hey, you know what? It's not actually healthy for you to just grind this out for 6 hours. Take a break. And it'll give you options to say, do you want to watch a show about stretching at your desk? Here's 3 minutes of stretching. Just do something. Stand up. You get points for getting a glass of water. You get points for saying, I'm going to go for a 5-minute walk. If you're working remotely, like I work in Austin remotely, I have a beautiful neighborhood. I know in 15 minutes, I can circle the block that I'm on, and it's a beautiful little green wooded street, and it just refreshes me. So healthy breaks is as important as the work tools that we give, right? So speaking of the work tools, I mentioned there's certain key signatures, there's certain beats, like 60, 90 beats per minute. There's a lot of research that says in this zone of non-vocal rhythmic music, most people are assisted by this in getting into their flow state. Now, we all have that friend who's like, I have to listen to death metal, it gets me there, or like, gangster rap. We all have that friend, right? They're statistically not the middle of the road. And if you want to hook up your Spotify on our platform and listen to your gangster rap, you absolutely can, right? We offer over 1,000 hours of custom focused music because luckily I know a lot of film composers. And right now, film composers are very available to create, original, beautiful music. So we have a lot of that, and it just helps. And by the way, a funny thing is, a sound engineer I know was in Kathmandu, and he came back and we were chatting. He's like, while I was there, I had my sound equipment with me, and it rained. He's like, I recorded 2 hours of rain up in the Himalayas. So I was like, can we put that in the app? It'd be kind of cool if you want to just listen to rain while you work. So we did. It was a huge hit. So we did a stream in Japan. We did the surf in Cyprus.
Wow.
One of the engineers I work with is in just outside of Denver, and there's a lake. There's a beautiful emerald lake up there near Banff or something that you hear the birds chirping. So there's a lot of like soundscapes. If you're like, hey, I don't need music today, I just want to hear like the rain or the wind or the birds or something, we got you. The smart assistant I mentioned is probably the core of it, which is in addition to running the Pomodoro Timer, which have you guys talked about Pomodoro Timers? Should we talk about that for a moment?
No. Sure.
Okay, so this is a productivity technique. Italian guy came up with this named Pomodoro Tomato because he based it on a kitchen timer that's shaped like a tomato. And it was the idea of work for 25 minutes on the timer, take a 5-minute break, work for 25 minutes, 5-minute break, do this, and then you take a longer break at the end of the bit. So we built that in. There's a timer, you'll set 25 and 5. You can customize it. If you like, I personally do 55 and 5 because I find in 25 minutes, I'm not at a break point. I'm usually in the middle of the thought, right? So you can customize it for yourself, but that's generally the idea of it. And there's also some research, and there's a great Huberman lab about blood glucose levels as you think, as you do deep thinking. And it seems that around 90 minutes in, you become somewhat depleted. Like your ability to do deep thought kind of erodes after 90 minutes. And after about 2 hours, sometimes you need some refresher, which is why we built a 2-hour break in. Say after 2 hours, we don't reward you for grinding it out. This is not the 90s. This is not a bunch of kids in a dorm room or in the garage in Silicon Valley. Like this is adults building huge businesses, right?
Yeah.
Who often have families. Shocking. So there's a Pomodoro Timer. There's a smart assistant that helps you break down your tasks, helps you get stuff done. You're a political blogger. Your smart assistant, you wake up and your smart assistant is like, hey, by the way, in the news last night, 3 things happened that seem like the kind of things you write about. Do you want me to suggest them to you? Sometimes that's super helpful. Just the cold start thing of like, oh, actually, that's a cool one. I could write that one, that. Because ultimately what we want to do is we want you to have that experience of joy, of happiness, of like, this is great. What I get to do, not what I have to do, is great. So there's a coffee shop where you can see other people. It's like a virtual co-working space. There's, productivity graphs, so you can see how you're doing, and you can see, my score went down. That's when I opened up YouTube and I watched that video. That's when I went back and checked my email because I was procrastinating. Things like that. We let you see how you're doing, and you can decide if you want to learn from it. So there's some other features, but that's kind of the core of it. It gives you what a lot of the smart people have talked about in one place, very affordably.
Love it. Cautionaries, pitfalls. Somebody wants to try
Don't
to
enter into a land war in Asia.
Yeah, right.
Right. but there's a cautionary tale. Don't do that.
Yeah, I tell you, right? But as people want to try to start experimenting with some of these ideas in their teams, what are some things they should be on the lookout for?
I'd say the biggest thing that I hear is if you approach this with a beginner's mind of like, let me see what I can learn, you are generally going to be very pleasantly surprised. And you approach it from, well, today's the day I'm going to be Superman and I'm going to fly around and you're going to be disappointed, right?
Right.
So it is going in there and just saying, let me see what I can learn today, as opposed to, let me see how I'm just going to crush it. It's like, let me step on the court and I'm just going to play like Michael Jordan. No, you're probably not, right?
Yeah.
But if you start watching Michael's, tape on Michael and you start like practicing, you're going to get better.
Yeah. Steven, this has been such a great conversation. I have a sneaking suspicion I could talk to you for hours about this stuff because it seems like it's so needed. It's such an important conversation that we don't have long enough to be able to do that. But do you have any last thoughts about what we've been talking about today?
I just really appreciate the way you structure the amount of research you did on the tools that we have built, the principles. Like when you and I met first talking about this, like it was so thoughtful, and I want to acknowledge that because I speak a lot. I speak probably 60 to 100 times a year.
Mm-hmm.
And some of them are very much like, hey, you know what you know, just come and share it with my audience. I'd love for them to learn. And I hope your audience appreciates that about you.
Well, and I hope they appreciate everything you brought to the forefront today, because again, we've talked about remote working before, but we've never talked about it in this context. And so I thought it was very, very important. So thank you very much for making time for us today. It's been absolutely brilliant. I've enjoyed every moment of it. And I can't believe a whole 60 minutes has gone by. It's been ridiculous.
I know, it flew by.
We've been in the flow, Steven. That's why. Thanks for joining me today.
Okay, have a great day. And thanks everyone for listening.
Why don't you let me know if this was of value to you? As always, my offer stands. If you would like 30 minutes of my time to brainstorm your business with you and your team, feel free to book yourself on my online calendar. The link is down below. And please make sure that you check out Steven's free offer. He's giving you a free 30-day access to his platform to try out. So make sure you give it a try. I know personally it would be an honor for me to be of service to you. So why don't you go ahead, reach out to me if you need anything. But at the meantime, why don't you go ahead and leave a review or a comment about this episode? I'd love to get your feedback. Was this of value to you? And of course, please, if you haven't done so yet, please make sure you are subscribed to this podcast. And please make sure you share it if you know somebody who could use this information. Thank you so much for joining me today. My name is Marc Haine. I hope you stay safe, stay healthy, and I hope you dare to be the exception.